ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Living Together Committee meeting. I'll ask Councillor Rangiaho to open the karakia.
Morena tātou. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tona. Kia mā kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai. E hi ake ana te ātākura, e tio, e huka, e hauhu, te hei Māori ora. Get ready for the westerly and be prepared for the southerlies. It will be icy cold inland and icy cold on the shores. May the dawn rise red, tipped on ice, on snow, on frost. 'Tis is the breath of life.
Kia ora. Today, Whakatane District Council goes live with the live streaming of council and standing committee meetings held in the Totara room within the council building. The webcast will be live streamed directly to council's YouTube channel in real time. The purpose of streaming meetings live is to provide greater access to council debate and decision making and to encourage transparency. To those members of the public here today, all care will be taken to maintain your privacy. However, as a visitor in the public gallery, your presence could be recorded. By remaining in the public gallery, it is understood your consent has been given if your image is inadvertently broadcast. Microphones are sensitive to noise. Please remain silent unless asked to speak. And I ask that all cell phones in that are silent. In case of an emergency, please follow into the building wardens and make your way to the nearest exit. The meeting point is located at Peace Park across the road. Bathroom facilities are situated to the left near the Chambers foyer entrance. Apologies. Councillor Puller's online. Everyone else here? Nothing to move there. Are there any announcements?
Yes, Chair, I would like to make an announcement just to do an acknowledgement of the birthdays we had of our Mayor Victor Luca this week, and also that it is Councillor Isles' birthday this week and today as well. So I just want to do and Councillor Tenches. So we're very fortunate to have the celebration. If it was not for their mothers and their parents, they would not be here today. So I just wanted to say to them, kia ora.
Thank you.
Is it appropriate we all sing happy? Okay, thank you for that. Conflicts of interest. Do members have any conflicts of interest to declare? No? Okay, public forum was nil. Confirmation of the minutes. Are there any corrections to the meeting minutes, which are on page 9 of the agenda? No corrections. Do I have a mover and a seconder to receive that the Living Together Committee confirm the minutes of its meeting held on 4th of April 2024 as a true and correct record? Councillor Tanzos? Councillor Isles? Any discussion? All those in favour? Against? Carried. I'll move the minutes of the other community boards. Also refer to page 9. Recommendation is that the following minutes be received. Murupara Community Board, 8th of April 2024. Tani Atua Community Board, 8th of April 2024. Tani Ahopi Community Board, 15th of April 2024. Rangataiki Community Board, 17th of April 2024. Community Funding Committee, 7th of May 2024. Murupara Community Board, 20th May 2024, Whakatane Ahopi Community Board, 20th May 2024. I'll run them all together. Councillor Isles moves, seconder. Deputy Mayor Imming, all those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you for that. We'll move on to reports, road naming. Laney and Steve Purlia, so please refer to pages 10 to 46 on the agenda. I'll leave it in your hands.
Morena tātou, thank you.
You met Sarah Ellis a couple of weeks ago, who led the workshop on the review of the road naming policy, and she is away this week. So I am Sarah Ellis today, introducing this paper for you that she's prepared. So the report recommends that that you approve option 1, which is to consult on the road naming and addressing policy, and that you approve the statement of proposal subject to any changes that you agree today. Our hope is that this policy will go out for public consultation on the 24th of June, and as you'll know, this has been a labour of love amongst staff, and that we have come together and spent considerable time looking at the detail of this, and we have now applied the input that you gave us on that workshop a couple of weeks ago. So the critical thing to note in the report is the table 1, which has the changes between the previous policy and what we're proposing for the current, or the new policy, to bring it into strategic alignment. Those that are in bold or italics have been added since the workshop, so there was some discussion about specific wording, so those have now been taken into account. So today we're asking for you to approve that we go out for consultation, and also to review the statement of proposal in Appendix 3 and give us some guidance on any changes you'd like to see. Thank you.
Thank you, Lainey. Any questions, clarifications? Deputy Mayor Amming?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, everybody. One of the things that I thought was missing there is I was on the understanding that councillors asked for a time frame to be linked to any engagement a developer might have with iwi or hapu, and I don't know if it is there and I've missed it, but
Is the
Within the policy itself,
yes.
so my understanding is there is a timeline, but as in a flow chart of process,
Yes.
and that has been added, but I would have to double check whether specific allowances for time are in there.
I think that was our indication, was because some of these developers who have tried to engage, it's not a high priority for some iwi and hapu, and this is where it kind of gets into the never land.
So councillor is suggesting a time frame be included in the consultation document.
We thought we said 8 weeks.
And what would be the consequence of not making the time frame?
Well, it means that staff and the developer can continue, and that iwi and hapu had time to give their consideration and feedback to engage with the developer.
And then what would be the time frame that is allowed for iwi who go through their own review process?
8 weeks, I don't know, a couple of months.
so
They didn't reply to this.
So one of the things inside of the documents, Steve, is looking at, I probably want a clarification on that legislative section 315 of the LGA 1974, because it has a time frame inside of it as part of legislation. In my notes, I've just got a measurement of time. I'd say these are 3 years. But then it lapses after that, and then you've got 1 year, and that's the maximum, and that's kind of the cutoff. So I don't know whether it's aligning that in there, or for the powers to be, can we change it to shorten it to a length? But that's just what it's saying in legislation, section 315. And I feel that's the measurement of time to work within in terms of that road naming. Although a lot of it has gone on for so long, maybe we're not catching up and doing what we should be doing within the timeframes. Is that why when we put the document together, it was the purpose of adding that, because it's a legislative requirement or something that we can default to? I don't know. That's the question. Clarity.
So again, it's actually more about having a time limit for a road naming process. Is that- Because I am going to ask the question of councillors, if iwi or hapu, or if staff or a developer doesn't meet the time limit that you're setting, what is the consequence of that? Because we would need to put that into the consultation document. At the moment, we have a timeline, but we don't have time limits. Time limits are quite different.
Sorry, I'm jumping in here, I wasn't at the workshop. Just section 315 of the local government, that's just the definition of what a road is. So that doesn't include things that mean time frames or anything like that. So
My team does.
315, yeah, okay. The way this issue is dealt with in other contexts, like the RMA as an example, is while you wouldn't specify a time frame, but the developer has the opportunity to show you, and you're making your decision, all the process they have gone through to try and get a response, and that then comes back as part of the information you use to make your decision. And I wonder if that's a better approach here rather than setting a hard and fast time frame, because there may be a whole lot of reasons why that time frame can't be met. You can show a record of what's been done, best endeavours if you like. Well, that just becomes part of your decision making ultimately when you feel it's fair and reasonable in terms of a developer's perspective or an EV perspective. So that'll progress here.
Councillor Tanshaw?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I support that. I think that would be a better approach because I think you do run into problems if you put too hard and fast timelines on these kinds of processes. But I agree with the Deputy Mayor that there's got to be some way of showing that someone has made efforts to engage, and if they have got no result, then we need to have a way of moving on from there. So I support that approach. Thank you. My question really was, is this part of our Rua strategy?
Yeah, it's an outcome, correct. So road naming isn't, refreshing the road naming policy is in alignment, is a KPI for the auditor. So there's an alignment with that.
Yeah.
However, standalone, the road naming policy has been identified by yourselves and staff as needing a refresh.
Yeah.
And there is value add to what David has referred to around getting some synergy of timeframes aligned with other legislation. When you're starting to set different ones, it becomes very confusing, one for staff, but also for iwi. If you align it to existing timeframes, there's value in there, because everyone knows what everything is.
But so, because, I mean, so we agreed, I think, unanimously to Rua, and one of the outcomes of that was about seeing Te Reo Māori more visible in our district. So it's clearly linked.
Yes.
I think I saw in the paper that there'd been engagement with some of the Whenua in development of this policy.
Yes, absolutely. If you've got any queries, I can bring Michelle Hingston forward. She led that program of work.
Just a secondary question. Did we also talk to developers about it?
I'm not sure as far as if we went out and spoke with developers. I think what our staff did do is looked at the journey with developers from an engagement space, i.e. our regulatory staff would have brought that forward. I will assume that. We didn't. This Māori team did not go out and speak to developers. We led the engagement with Iwi. But I would say that our other teams involved in road naming, particularly probably infrastructure, would have had lots of historical improvements that they would have seen, and one of those big ones is bringing the alignment of the road naming at the front end of the process, and that's very clear. I think we gave that feedback last time.
Victor?
Yeah, I mean, my recollection of our discussions in the workshop, I did raise the issue of the dangers of not having a limit, because we don't want to end up in the debacle that recent times, that we've got to do everything we can to avoid that. So I'd support some sort of limit. I mean, you can't just have it open-ended. I don't know if anyone took notes of those discussions, but they were all quite lengthy, and I guess we don't want to repeat them here today, but
What I'm hearing from councillors is, yeah, actually, there needs to, what feels like there needs to be a step or a way of drawing a process to a close. And I think you've probably defaulted down onto time frames because that's what we're familiar with. But I wonder if you just allow us a bit of time to have a think about how we might frame that. I don't personally feel like time frames is the right way, but I think that there is a way of putting in place some sort of caveat that enables council to draw a process to a close if a process gets stuck in a particular part of the cycle. And I think David's point too, from that regulatory perspective, because they deal with the consents, it's something to do with ensuring that the process has been followed and that there have been reasonable attempts to gather the information required in order for council to be able to make its decision. So if it's okay, I would be happy to go away and try and have a think about actually how we frame that.
So basically you're talking about a time frame, but you're trying to find different words.
A time limit.
I don't think it's a time frame. I think it's a some sort of process or way that councillors can make some concessions or acknowledge that a process has been followed, but can make a decision to draw a process to a close, even if they haven't got all the information that they want.
What's the time frame?
Not necessarily.
No, it's not a time frame.
You got a follow-up to this?
Yeah, does that mean that what you're suggesting is that we take it off the table for now until we sort that out? Is that what we're saying?
Well, I guess that's a question back to council. It's your policy, it's not ours. We just do our research, provide best practice, do the strategic alignment. I think that we could actually still go out to consultation whilst we're preparing this in parallel, and then when the feedback from consultation comes back to council, we circle back to this particular issue and try to resolve it in a further meeting. We could do that, or we can go away, work on that, and then come back to council with a proposal.
Councillor Borden?
Oh, kia ora. I'm just referring to whether it's time frame or time limit. That there's also the potential too that if there isn't those things that Steve's talked about making sure that in the process that they've either had attempts or that there's been a recording of attempts, that it's also the risk of litigation probably later on down the track. It's more, I would think that the process needs to be able to show that accountability on both sides, I guess, to be able to ensure that that has been thorough. Otherwise, I suppose if we don't have that and we just have a time limit, we may open ourselves up for grievances because of that, and then they may be able to provide the reasons as to why that time frame wasn't met. So I can understand the point of being able to ensure that there's a procedural kind of thing. That's
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Fuller?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Stephen, you mentioned last time we met that developers should think about this earlier rather than later, which has been the case lately. So I wonder if you could give some thought around when the development first comes to the attention of council that you would encourage the developer to be engaging and maybe not so much a time frame, but from that point to when the subdivision is ready, there should be a conclusion. Thank you.
Let me comment on that, because I was thinking exactly the same thing. There's a sort of there's a policy and there's a practice element to this, and I think the thing we need to improve on, and it's lapsed over time, is asking the developer to suggest programs or start that process as soon as they put in the application for a consent. The consent itself will take quite a period of time to actually get through. So there is time, as long as it's initiated early on. So I think that's a discipline on us as much as it is on the developer to encourage that. So I think the practice of when the process is kicked off is just as important as the words of the policy.
Councillor Tansel?
Thank you. Just coming back to this question of how we kind of provide a closeout, I think it's a really good question. Seems to me, well, a couple of things. One is, personally, I'd be happy to approve something for consultation, and this could potentially be one of the questions we ask, is how do we ensure that, you know, this happens within a suitable time frame or something like that. And the other thing, well, two other things. One is we've said in there that staff are available to help, and I think if someone runs into difficulty, then the obvious remedy is to come to us and say, hey, look, I'm finding it difficult, and get some assistance from our organisation. And then the third thing is, I wonder if a statement in there that just says really clearly something along the lines of, you know, where there's evidence that attempts have been made to engage with local hapu iwi, you know, this isn't the exact right wording, but where there's been evidence that attempts have been made without a result, that council's not inhibited from proceeding and making a decision. You know, just something that deals with the question Tony raised, that our policy clearly says that if the evidence attempts to be made, we can make a decision. There's no kind of comeback on it.
How long is a reasonable time?
Well, it's not. I haven't said a reasonable time. I've said reasonable efforts, and so you know.
But how do you measure it? See, that's the whole thing. How do you measure what a reasonable effort is? You know, because otherwise people can say, well, you haven't given us enough time, or we actually haven't, you know, been able to, and all of a sudden it drags on like the one at Coastlands for 3 years.
That's the problem with any regulation or law, is that, you know, the usual test is what a reasonable person would think is reasonable. You know, and we're sitting there, it's us who make the decision, so we're going to sit around at the table and go, was that a reasonable effort? You wrote an email and didn't hear back, and then you gave up. Well, that's probably not. But you know.
So what's different to the current situation at Coastlands? It's just going on, and
yeah, well, that's because the procedure we've got now is.
We let Paul.
There is actually case evidence of, and tested through the Environment Court, of reasonable effort to engage. So there is a definition of what a reasonable effort looks like, and it looks like, in the practical terms, emails, driving out, phone calls. There is guidelines about what a reasonable effort looks like to engage. If they don't respond, well, that's taken in, and that's then factored into your decision making when you go to make your decision in here. Because you can see, have staff and has the developer made reasonable effort? And if there's evidence and we can stand up and defend that, and I'll use the Environmental Court to go that far for RMA, that's a test. So there is evidence on what that is.
Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. But a couple of comments. First, if I was a developer and I saw this policy after consultation, the first thing I'd go is, well, how long is, you know, time? And I think it should be support a question in the consultation about what do you consider a reasonable effort and or time, so we get feedback from all sides of the party. The other comment I'd like to make is thinking about what David said earlier about front-ending this when the developer first comes to council. Well, why can't we just have the status quo policy with that included?
Some of the key concerns with the previous one, what we keep coming up with, is some of the specifications of what that could be, that word or that name. So it must be easy to pronounce, which is subjective. So that's what some of the stuff we're trying to do change in this current policy. So that was part of the issue that when we were trying to rectify this one.
Yeah, other improvements in the
I didn't really know any other improvements. I just feel like it's like a little bit more anti-developers, and I thought we're here to encourage developers to have quick access to get on and driving the community. The status quo wasn't even listed as an option. Isn't that the normal process, is that the status quo being listed as an option?
So I guess, can I just say, I guess you've had one incident recently which has caused issues for you, but you've named multiple roads in the district and things have worked well and gone well. So I just encourage you to keep some balance around the conversation. We don't want, obviously, for this to be a prolonged, drawn out process for anybody, including iwi and hapu, for whom it takes time and resource as well. And I guess what we're saying is we're trying to balance something here between our strategic objective of our Te Toi Waka Whakare, so our relationships with iwi and hapu, and we know that this is a really important opportunity to give effect to our Reo Rua strategy, but
Not our Reo Rua strategy, it's Ngāti Awa's with the support of us.
So we've partnered and we're a signatory to that agreement with the government and Ngāti Awa. But it is an opportunity to ensure that there is a more balanced approach to this across the district. At the same time, you're absolutely right, Deputy Mayor Mick, trying to ensure that developers have a very clear process, they're very aware of what the expectations are, and they know that council will support a process if it is prolonged, and decisions will be made. So it is about a balance between those two things, and I think what the staff are saying is that there are improvements in the policy that our stakeholders have told us that they are looking for. So they may not be major, but it's the nuance of improving policy. And I guess this has been a long time coming. Today's decision is just about we need to take it out for further consultation for the community to give us their feedback. So it's about the balance between trying to strike that balance between the two objectives.
I would add that the current policy in its state and staff procedures do not make us compliant with the Local Government Act. I did mention that last time, around that our procedures do not guide us down a path that we must enable iwi and hapu participation in decision making. And our policies do not reflect that, and they do not guide staff to do that. So there is the balance, but there's also the compliance side. So just reminding Council, and that's the reason why that policy has been drafted for your decision making. It does cover off, it provides staff the mechanism to say, here's a process, we've got to go out and engage, because at the moment it does not say that.
I'm not sure whether we're in question phase or discussion phase, or we're doing it all together. I've just got a comment, but I'll leave it to the further on.
Any other questions or clarification? Councillor Dennis?
Maybe not clarification, so I'll give it a miss.
No other? Okay. We'll move to recommend.
Sorry, Mr Chair. In reading section 319 of the LGA 74, it does say in there that to name and alter the name of any road. It doesn't say anything in there about linking it to Te Tiriti or other obligations. So I'm interested, can you give us how we're not fulfilling what the LGF 74 says?
So you have to read the legislation and it's a whole. Go.
Well, I was just going to say, when we went through the workshop, it was more about an alignment to council's strategies and policies that it has. So strategic priority is around iwi and hapu participation in council decision making. We have a Mara relationship strategy that's all about improving those treaty principles around iwi and hapu participating in decision making. So the conversation in the workshop was more about how our current process for road naming doesn't have a strong participation element to it, which was at odds to our strategies as an organisation. It wasn't so much about what the LGA was telling us specifically, although the LGA does refer to earlier on, sections 5, 6, something like that, around our obligations under the treaty and our role in ensuring that iwi and hapu are participating. It's not a mandatory requirement under the LGA. So we had the LGA, but it was actually more about council's strategies and a better alignment with those in terms of participation.
Yeah, Victor.
New roads are generally created as a result of a subdivision, which implies there is a developer. So in a world of private ownership, which is the world we're in, that road exists because the developer developed it, otherwise there would be no road. So my question is, should the developer have some sort of special right to name the road that exists because they're developing it? Because that doesn't seem to be reflected very strongly either in either of the policy, either the original or the... So, does the developer have special priority or right because of the road that they have?
Their right is to provide 3 options.
That's it.
And ultimately it's council's decision, but the developer also, and section 8.2 in the table 1, talks about the specific clarity of the expectations of developers in terms of demonstrating that engagement has taken place. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the 3 options they put up will be the suggestions of other parties of engagement. They can still be their own suggestions, but they just need to demonstrate that they have actually engaged.
It seems that we have weakened the right of the developer somewhat. But anyway,
That's Riles.
Just in response to the Mayor's question, once the developer hands over that road, it becomes council property, so it has to be administered by council. So with the exception of very few private roads, see how it becomes our responsibility. Yeah, public roads, exactly.
I understand that.
Local roads.
Mr. Dennis.
Obviously, we're in a period of debate or suggestions that have gone away from questioning, so I'd like to have my turn. I'd like to back up what the Chief Executive has said, which you might be surprised with, is that the current policy has worked really, really well, except for the one issue at Coastlands. And I remember the last time we did a road naming here, I was actually pleasantly surprised to see that the majority of the names went to Māori names, and with the developers' agreements and all that sort of stuff. And we've just got to be careful we don't knee-jerk reaction just because of this current situation. And so also I understand what Paul Warwick is saying, that there needs to be an adjustment to go along with the current legislation and the aim of the current legislation and where we are as a council in our relationship with iwi. So I think this could be quite easily solved by staying with the current one and adjust 8.1.4, which says new road names are to comply with the council's road naming criteria, etc., if a Māori name is written.
Can we come to this shortly, Gavin? Yeah. So we'll move out. No one's got any other questions? Okay, we'll move to the recommendations on page...
Sorry, Mr. Chair. I did have one, and it was just the clarification over who has the rights to be able to name the road. And I just wanted to ask, under law, who has the powers to name the road? Council. So therefore, ultimately, the voice of the developer is heard through the council, and based on the information that they provide, we then make that final decision. Is that correct?
That's right.
All right, we're moving to recommendations on page 10. I'm going to move through them individually. So, someone like to move that the Living Together Committee receive the road naming and addressing policy review report. Councillor Boynton, Deputy Mayor Amming. Any discussion? All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Resolution 2, we've changed to that the Living Together Committee approve option 2, which is to retain the current policy, Appendix 1. The mover?
Read that again, sorry, Mr. Chair.
That the Living Together Committee approve option 2, which is to retain the current policy, Appendix 1.
It's not the recommendation that's...
No, it's changed from the agenda.
When did that change?
Well,
Alex, that would have to be a proposal that's voted on to change the recommendation.
okay.
So,
All right. Okay, we go back to Option 1, the Living Together Committee approve option 1, which is to proceed with public consultation on the draft road naming and addressing policy, Appendix 2. Councillor Tanzos. Councillor Boynton, second. Any discussion?
Sorry, we're a bit confused. So we're back up at the recommendations.
Page 10.
And the recommendation is to proceed,
Option 1.
option 1, going out to public consultation with the new draft
Yes.
road naming policy.
Yes, that's correct.
What's your question?
Got any discussion on it?
So that recommendation is on the table for discussion, and you don't want to make any proposals or changes.
Oh, no, here it is.
No, there it is.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Sorry.
So, look, I support option 1. We've had an extensive workshop about this. There are a number of deficiencies with the current policy, both in terms of how it's framed, the objectives. We've talked this through. In my view, what we need is a policy that articulates that one of the objectives of road naming is around having a district where the road names reflect the character of our districts, reflects the culture and history of our district. That's not just Māori, but history is all our people here. We've run into particular problems lately with this one example that's been raised, but the policy hasn't worked profoundly well every time. We actually have some kerfuffle every time road namings come up. The vast majority of them just go through smoothly, but we constantly have problems, and we've been identifying the need to actually amend our policy for years now. Staff done a huge amount of work on it, we've run workshops on it, we've put our feedback into it, and it surprises me that there's a proposal now that we just go back to the status quo, which wasn't working, which is why we did all the work to develop a new policy in the first place. And all we're doing here is voting to put it out to the public, so the public can actually have a say about the road names. And road names are really important in our district because they're about the visibility. You drive around and the road names you see in our district tell you about the character of our district. There's no other districts in the country, I don't think, where you'd see Te Koti Road. You know, that to me, that says I'm in Whakatane district. You know, those kinds of things, the names of the people who made the history of this place, and the events that happen are commemorated in the names of our roads. And we have, I think we want to have a policy that supports that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I concur, and upon balance of reading everything, the issues that I have with the current policies, which has been outlined in the report, is it is consistent with our strategic priorities as it currently stands. While it may have been working okay, I do think we're now at the stage where we are trying to align our policies, bylaws, everything with what our priorities are, and this is inconsistent. So I feel we do need to align it. The current policy is more difficult for a Māori name to be selected, and the current policy consultation with iwi is only required when a Māori name is proposed. So, you know, there isn't much opportunity for them to provide input in those circumstances. And I think the current specifications, as already mentioned, are difficult to well, I don't know, use, apply, whatever terminology you would like to use. But so in summary, I will be supporting the recommendation for option 1.
Deputy Mayor Amen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, I actually think I don't disagree with what's been said, but I think the current policy does meet the legislative requirements. Our strategic objectives, we have come a long way in the last couple of years of engaging and improving our relationships with the iwi and hapu. And really it was the kerfuffles that we've had, and there has been more than one kerfuffle in my 4 to 5 years on the road naming policy. It's occurred because staff have not abided by the current policy. And that's where it's built some ill will between developers and iwi and hapu. And the other thing about it is that we do have an instance where a Māori name was proposed and other hapu did not think that the person who proposed that name should have proposed that name. Because they went from that hapu. And so I think the current policy does what we need to do. Yes, we can improve the engagement by setting it out at the front end, but yeah, I don't think we need to go for option one.
Thank you. Councillor Rangiahu?
I'll be supporting option one based on exactly what Deputy Mayor Nick has spoken about. It does address those issues inside of this draft policy, and I think those are the lessons that we learned that came out of the submissions. The cosmetic side of it, I love seeing Te Reo Rua strategy right next door to it. And it's probably even the definitions sitting inside of those policies where it's actually missing inside of the standard one that we hold now. There are areas in there that's probably, it needs to be balanced out so we can still hear the developers inside of this, because there is a strong sense towards Māori, and I love it. But in the same context, I'm still looking at this has to be something that is fair and true, and that the developers are also seen inside of this. The front end, like David has suggested, absolutely, because I think it became a guideline for when these staff are going, can we guarantee that when the next whoever comes on board and that engagement, that they know that this is the thing that we went through. The one current sitting now is, I feel, is still too vague. But I think it just needs to be tightened up, and we're still in the draft form. There's time frames if we can just sharpen up on some of those things inside of there. But I would still, I'm going to support this recommendation. It just needs to be really tidied up, tightened, and smart.
Councillor Morton?
Kia ora. Yes, I will be supporting the recommendation for option one. I understand that we are in some political times at the moment where there is some politicised topics around Māori in particular at the moment around the nation, and so I do also believe that enabling it to go out for public consultation, that it is also supported with good communication around the practicalities of improving policy, and that it is not about encroaching or taking away any others' rights or abilities, or particularly those of developers. I do support the changes, however, I do understand that some of the language used may be a bit strong in some of the wording there that may cause people to feel like they might be alienated or put off. And I don't think that's the intention of improving the policy. It doesn't necessarily have to have overly strong language. But in this recommendation, which is to put it out to public consultation, I do support that. Thank you.
Before I go to Councillors O'Brien and Paul, I'm going to go back to Councillor Dennis, who I cut off in question time. So, do you want to comment, Councillor Dennis?
Thank you. Like I say, obviously the old policy had a few shortcomings, but I don't think we need to go to a new policy. I think we could quite easily do it on page 22 of the old policy, 8.1.4, where it talks about a Māori name recommend, I reckon we should change that to read, am I allowed to read this out, please? That the developer shall consult the local iwi and hapu for a fourth option of a Māori name significant to the local area to be considered alongside the developer's three options. If after a reasonable effort has not resulted in the fourth option of a Māori name, then the fourth option shall lapse. And it's just a simple tidy up like that, which says everything we want to do when you change the new policy. It states that the developer has to consult local iwi and hapu, that it shall be an option they have to present with their three options. And I go back to the last time when we did the, as I was saying before, when we did the road naming policy, road naming 2020, and of the 5 or 6 different roads we had to rename, I think we ended up with a majority with Māori names. In fact, if I remember rightly, one of the developers was quite impressed at the name that was suggested to him and went with that instead of the own name he wanted. So I think we have to have faith in human nature, but this actually states that you need to consult, so there's no option. And in the case of the recent kerfuffle, that would have been solved out right at the very beginning. And so I'm going to vote no to going to a new policy just for the sake of going to a new policy, where you could just add that change that one paragraph and make a huge difference.
Okay, thanks for that. And we'll carry on with discussing option 1, and if that doesn't go through, we'll come back for an amendment, your amendment, correct? Okay. Councillor O'Brien?
Yeah, I approve. I support option 1. I have been a part of the naming process in the past. I had to work really hard and go out and do a lot of work on my own to get Puti Kaiwa Lane passed. It was to sit down with developers, so the amount of work and time and effort that I can put in. I do think that areas, processes that are in that need to be refined, and I can help with that. I do think that option 1 works for me. It works for us as iwi. Supporting it.
Thank you. Councillor Paula?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, just a general comment, really, and it applies to probably all our policies. But the main thing is they have to be fair to all. That's my view.
Thank you, Councillor Paula. No other comments? Mayor Victor?
Yeah, I can't support option 1 as it stands. I agree with what the Deputy Mayor said, and I have problems with statements like the developer must be aware that in some instances the process of naming a road is not clear cut and could take longer than expected and may be subject to the internal processes of iwi hapu authority concerned. And this comes back down to the timing issue. So I could potentially support option 1 were it to include a fuse to avert what has happened. But I think that the current policy has actually worked reasonably well. I think we've got quite a relatively even breakdown in naming at the moment, depending on how you count and what you count and all of that sort of stuff. But it doesn't seem to be completely lopsided either. So I won't be supporting option 1 as it stands.
Councillor Isles?
Thank you, Chair. It's been a good, hearty debate. I, at the onset, didn't support option 1, but again, listening to the views that have been put forward by staff and by David in particular, to say that, to bring everything into the regulatory alignment, I can see how much easier it's going to be all round. Going out for consultation gives the developers, iwi hapu, the opportunity to submit, so it would be interesting to see where they lie. So for that very reason, I will be supporting option option 1, recommendation 2.
Thank you. Councillor Tansos, do you want to reply?
Yeah, thank you.
Before he does, can I just make a comment? And I'm not going to badger one way or the other. I just find it really interesting that apart from Councillor Tansos and Councillor Isle, everyone who's going to go for option 1 is saying, but it's not quite what we wanted adjusted. So why are we actually going out at this stage with a document which the majority of people don't quite agree with, even the ones that are going to vote for it? Should we actually pause and come back and relook at it? I find it a bit concerning. We're rushing this out to the community.
Is this the second contribution, Councillor?
For all
There's only one right of reply, and it's mine.
That's up for us all to decide individually in that when we vote, but right of reply?
Thank you. Look, I think the points have all been said and for and against. I'd make the point, and I don't agree, Councillor, that everyone who is voting for it, except for us two, have said, but it's got a whole lot of deficiencies, and I don't think that's the view that's been expressed. And I would say that while I understand your point of view in terms of the amendment that you've suggested, the concern for me is that your proposal, and I think some of the opposition views this in what I think is the wrong way, because we seem to be, a number of us seem to be seeing it as a question of developers versus the hapu, and developers can put up some options and we'll give the hapu a chance to put up one as well, and then we can kind of fight it out as to which one to go with. And I don't think that that's the intention of their policy. My understanding of what we're trying to do here is load the process right up front, right at the beginning, so that it goes, it's kind of can run concurrent when the resource consent's going through. Developers are likely going to have to talk to hapu and iwi in any case, just as part of their consent. So all we're saying is, while you're talking to them about all the other consent matters, you talk to them about this at the same time. It makes it easier for everyone because it's one package of one conversation to be had, or one package of things to be had in a conversation. And so and then the idea is not that we have developers saying we want this, and then hapu saying we want this, and then we're going to kind of somehow make a hard choice. I think the idea is that the developers and the hapu sit down and have a conversation and kind of come up with some ideas that they all like. Because the idea is not to have an adversarial result where someone loses and someone wins, but to have an outcome where everyone goes, actually, we've come up with a really nice solution that everyone kind of agrees with. And by and large, I think that's what's going to happen. The idea that somehow we're disadvantaging developers by asking them to consult with hapu iwi about a name for their roads is just, I think, wrong. This is not a punitive thing for developers. It's just a process to go through, and at the end of the day, the developer will still put up the options that they choose to put up after having talked to hapu and iwi, and we will still be the decision makers, and we'll take account of the information we've got.
Okay, thank you. So we'll put the motion that the Living Together Committee approved option 1, which is to proceed with public consultation on the draft road naming and addressing policy appendix 2. All those in favour?
Aye.
Hands up. Against? Mr. Polo? John?
Yes, I'm against.
Thank you. So it's passed, option 1 is passed. Thank you for that, thank you for the discussion. Recommendation 3 that Living
Are
Together...
we going to have our names division corded and reported?
Division called for.
Okay.
So at the moment I have for who's voted against, Councillor Dennis, Mayor Luca, and you, Councillor James, and Councillor Puller.
Yep.
Normally say, would you like it recorded?
Yeah. Sorry, would you like a recording?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you for that. Recommendation 3 that the Living Together Committee approve the statement of proposal. Appendix 3, have a mover. Councillor Tedros, Councillor O'Brien, we got any discussion?
Just the first one, just a point of clarity is when staff are writing reports, can they please refer the page number as well? So there's actually 3 documents within this policy and we're jiggling around all the time.
Page number until it's in the agenda. So when the report goes to governance, we don't.
It is a challenge with this Stellar system. The page numbers get set once we upload it, so it can be difficult to do that. And then if we go in and change it, you can't move the page numbers. So it is a little bit of a challenge for us, but it can be hard to navigate when you've got multiple pages of different documents. So yeah, I think what we'll do is take away that make the navigation easier.
Just a secondary comment, Mr Chair. Just on Appendix 3, which is what is going out for consultation, do we need to include with suggestions, you know, after that front loading and rearranging the wording about timing?
Yeah, I mean, yes, absolutely. I think we should. I mean, what I heard is it is worth hearing from the community at this point. We haven't yet, so let's put something out anyway and get some feedback. That it actually does need to be fair to developers, but also to our partnership principles. Yeah, it's actually fair on both sides.
That's right.
But also, I think we do need to include consultation documents. This need for being able to bring a process to a close, and I think there will be some words around, you know, if it is protracted, if council is satisfied that there's been reasonable efforts, or if council feels that the delay is impacting on the construction process or the development, then there is ability for them to circumvent the process. So we'll think of some words around that, but make sure that that is included front and centre in the consultation document.
Resolution 3, we don't need to make an amendment to that to include it. Staff will just include a rework on some of those things.
Yeah, because we just need to think about how, if we include that, how it might impact some of the other bits. But yeah.
Victor?
No, that was actually my question. Yeah. So, subject to those, taking note of what Officer Purdy has said, I'm okay with it going out.
I think I was just going to reiterate the same thing, to be able to try and alleviate those concerns that were highlighted before. I think that's a workable way to go forward before it goes as part of the document that goes out, I think.
And the other bit I noted down too was we'll make an effort to identify some existing guidelines around reasonable and also timeframes, and we'll look to try and include those in the document, but also put those, I think, front and centre in the consultation document, because it does then refer to the ability for council to be able to move through the process in a different way.
And also too, can that, in my previous comments around some of the language or wording used, if that could also be looked at as well, so that it doesn't, like when it says strongly.
Just to pose one question in reply to that, do you mean in the consultation questions, or do you mean when we do the final policy?
The policy.
So once we've received the submissions from the consultation process.
So we've got no other discussion?
Just one quick, I mean, just for clarity, we will be approving the consultation document anyway, presumably.
That's
That's what's happening right now, is that?
Yes.
That's the final one.
We'll make these amendments.
With those correct amendments.
Thank you.
No other discussion? All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you for that. Thank you for your discussion. And thank you for no amendments. Move on to, thank you team.
Morning team.
Sorry, Mum.
We're going to move on to arts and culture.
No crackers?
So I welcome Mariana and external consultant Leanne Jordan to the table, please.
Thank you, Chair. So this morning, as the Chair's just said, we have Tangi Mariana, who's our project lead, and Leanne Jordan from Dauntless Advisory. Leanne has been engaged to help us with the Creative Hub investigation, and I will pass you over to Leanne to say a few words. No decision, I mean, today is really about updating you, and really there's no decision to be made today, it's just receiving the paper.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Leanne Jordan taku ingoa. It's a pleasure to be here, actually. I'm not from these parts, I hail from Te Waikato, and I've been thrilled, actually, to be asked to be part of this project. Firstly, I'd commend you all and the staff on the development and adoption of your arts, culture and creativity project. It's a great platform, and it's great to be part of one of the key priority actions from that, which is the investigation of the potential for a creative hub. And I'll do this when I say hub, because a hub is not necessarily one place, as you might have seen in our report. Whakatane district is beautiful. I have been actually overwhelmed both by the physical beauty, but also by the presentation, if you like, of your community. And I have been surprised, despite my experience in the Bloom sector, at the depth of the artistic and creative culture, community that you have here. So I think there are some real opportunities to leverage this investigation to achieve outcomes at multiple levels for the town and the district. A little bit about my background, just see my brief resume is attached to the report, but I do have extensive experience with strategic and operational leadership in several sectors, including the GLAM, or the galleries, libraries, art galleries, museum sector, and with tourism. Perhaps most relevant to this project is my experience with visitor destinations in Kirikiriroa, Hamilton. I was responsible for Hamilton Gardens, Te Kararo Nature Precinct, which included Hamilton Zoo and Waiwhakariki Natural Heritage Park, and the Kato Museum and the eyesight, as well as related capital development project teams for those. So I have a lot of experience, I guess, in leveraging community facilities, for want of for a generic term, to achieve outcomes that serve tourism, residents, city place making and visibility, as well as wellbeing outcomes. I guess the key points in terms of the work that we've done to date is that emphasis on using this opportunity for multidimensional outcomes. It is about, I think, recognising, I'd use the word understated, the creative sector you have currently. And I would note that a good proportion of that, in keeping with national trends, self-employed. So the enterprise element is there, and that, I think, is to be commended. Arts and culture, arts and creativity was the fastest growing sector over the last 12 months in terms of contribution to GDP. So it's not to be, I think, underestimated in terms of the contributions it can make. I think that kind of the key points I'd like, maybe one more if I may, which is a visitor destination is, in my view, is an activity and a function or a place or space that has an intrinsic purpose. Mm-hmm. It differs from a visitor attraction in the way that it then shares that purpose with others, community, visitors and residents, for educational opportunities, for fun and delight, to share, to grow, and to build that sense of place and community. And a creative hub has the ability to be such a visitor destination with all the benefits that derive from that. So yeah, destination tourism opportunities should be purposeful, not incidental, and I think taking the opportunities that present in terms of any infrastructure or investment you're looking at making, potentially in the future with your community, because it's important that these things, I think, are also community and sector-led, that deliver on multiple fronts. Thank you. Tangi Miriana, is there anything that you wanted to do?
Not to your beautiful introduction, but if there's, no, I think we're happy to go straight to the paper, and if there's any questions, we'll be happy to respond accordingly.
Any questions?
Great report.
Amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome, Leanne and Morena Tangimiriana. Just looking at page 48, 3.3. The first bullet point, consultation and research to identify, haven't we already done that in terms of getting the strategy to this point?
A huge amount of work's been done on that, as you know, and we've referenced that and we've sourced that and used that as the base for this next stage of consultation, which is about a narrowing, if you like, or a zooming in on priority requirements rather than the broader range of requirements that we'll receive through this process.
In the secondary, if that's all right. And I know there has been ideas about the Wally Sutherland site. Have you identified any alternate sites, or is it still in the mix?
It is still in the mix, so there are a number of options. We're trying to be mindful here too, and where we formulate a report for you ultimately to consider short-term, medium-term, long-term options and the relative implications of those for and costs and all those kinds of things for you. So Wally Sutherland, along with other sites, including non-council-owned sites, potentially are live options that we're exploring at the moment. Would be premature, I think, at this point to focus in on. Although, as we're very aware, and you're very aware, there's a huge amount of interest in some places over others.
Luca?
Yeah, no, thanks for that. In your report, you make quite a bit of fanfare about how we have this vibrant arts community and how unique we are. Are we really that unique? I mean, don't lots of other places have also vibrant arts communities? Who would you compare us with?
With all due respect, I try really hard not to compare you. I think that's the point of uniqueness, and so the characteristics, I think, it might be the easiest way to describe why I think that there's real value in your offering here is, and both Ministry of Culture and Heritage and Creative New Zealand reports talk about the increasing importance of Ngā Toi being perceived as central to the tourism economy because of the unique stories of place and history that they tell. So what is essentially unique for you here is that you have 600-year history of this place and the many peoples that have lived and contributed to it here. It's very rich in artistic expression based on the way the stories are told and the many different art forms that result from that. But proportionate to your population base, you have a significant number of people who identify with the creative sector, and many of them have national and international reputations. And I myself was surprised, actually, when I started looking into it, about the number of artists, Rangatoi, Ngā Toi Māori, that have international networks and are regularly travelling and bringing people from overseas here. The opportunity for foreign investment, for arts and cultural tourism is one of the things that Ministry of Culture and Heritage and Creative New Zealand point to in terms of their support for the sector. I think you have, and I haven't found a better word than boutique at the moment, it's a bit tricky, but you have a niche opportunity here, I think. And importantly, you have a very proactive creative community. So there are people who are actively looking to partner to achieve outcomes. They're not sitting back and saying this is something council needs to do for us, which is not always my experience when I do these things. But also the conversations we've started having with business. So Creative Bay of Plenty, recognising that its boundary doesn't extend quite as far as here. Toy EDA and some of the other agencies, funding agencies involved, suggest that they are also looking for opportunities to partner. So again, if we stop thinking about this as kind of a community-based arts endeavour and think about the multiple strands that could be weaved woven into here, there are businesses that are interested, there are funding agencies that are interested, there are economic development agencies that are interested, and you've got the community itself that's looking for an outcome. I think it could serve, something well designed could serve all those purposes.
Do we have many genres of different art in our district?
So the Creative New Zealand has a list of genres, which is what we based the survey on. But I mentioned in the report some of the areas that I think are a little bit underserved at the moment, and they are the emerging art forms. They are things like sound production, film production, some of the stuff around STEM. There's also creative, you know, gaming, all that kind of thing. It's not just what we've necessarily traditionally understood by the arts. And I think I watched some of the LTP submissions and saw that you had a presentation by Anthony Clyde and James McCarthy, who I've also spoken to on a number of occasions. You know, I think they represent, to a certain extent, they're not claiming to represent, but I would say they're indicative of that entrepreneurial community that you have, that are investing themselves as well as supporting their communities.
Oh, very interesting. Thanks.
Councillor Dennis?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much for your presentation. It was really interesting to listen to. You made a couple of comments there that I just want to ask a question on. As you said that arts, creative arts and all that is the fastest growing sector of GDP in the last 12 months. And you also talked about the number of artists we've got that are going overseas and bringing back overseas, etc. And that further enhances the local creative arts. So is there a spillover? So for the investment from those people to come in here and invest into our arts and that, does that spill over into investment, economic investment for the town in your experience?
Absolutely. So I think they, and which is why I stress the importance of placemaking in this, because profile, you can't put a dollar value sometimes on profile. And when we think about marketing, there's multiple ways that we promote ourselves as a town or a region. And it's as much about who our people are and what we do as what we do by virtue of advertising and promotional campaigns. If I perhaps give you an example, if we look at, so the visitor destinations Kirikiriroa Hamilton, our visitation grew through COVID. And we bucked the trend there. But I think that was because we were well known for Hamilton Gardens, and then we leveraged that for other things. So Te Kararo Nature Precinct was a successful attempt to create a second key visitor destination for the town to increase the bed nights and move people from one side of the city to the other side of the city. The theme through COVID was we were open outdoor spaces and therefore we were safe. So there are often ways to leverage your opportunity without peripherally in a way, if you know what I mean. It wasn't about come to the zoo to see animals or come to see conservation in action. It was about there's a nice safe space for you to be outdoors with others during a pandemic, and same with the gardens. So we use the gardens to promote Waikato Museum, we use it to promote connections to where you can eat, where you can stay, how you can combine this into your itinerary. The tourism wraparound opportunities. And then of course remember, as these businesses grow, they're also consumers of other businesses and services that you have in your town. And I think the livability aspect is increasingly attractive in terms of attracting business in and or retaining business and talent locally.
Very good, that's good, thank you. Councillor Tantros? Oh, sorry.
I would just remind the members that in the last sort of 3 or 4 years, or sort of what's fresh of mind, we've got you've got Mātātua Kapahaka, you've got Tūhoia Hure, which pulls probably up to 5,000 a day, spread over 3 days. We've got Te Tuki, which is several thousand over 2 to 3 days. You've got the sculpture show, you've got Kōputu and all of the arts that occur there. You've got New Zealand Symphony Orchestra and the attraction that brought, and I think that the online audience was over 100,000 live watching, as opposed to those that just attended. And I would put it out there that the arts sector probably leads the recreational sector as far as numbers in this town over a weekend or a long weekend. And I guess what I observe, that's how strong the Eastern Bay's arts sector is as far as return of investment and bringing people into the town on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. That if you talk to shop owners about what the foot traffic that brings, traffic service management, marquee hire, those are all businesses that support the arts sector on multiple locations, and Whakatane has always had a really heavy footprint in that. For a little town, it's well known, and that ripples out to those international, those artists that live that are internationally recognised. When they decide to put up an event, that's how big of attraction comes into Whakatane, Otaki and the surrounding wider Eastern Bay. That's how big the return of revenue is in the arts sector.
And perhaps if I could just add to that, you have, as part of these creative communities, people who are very experienced at access funding. And this is one thing, you know, up into the hundreds of thousands of millions of dollars. So, yeah, it makes sense to leverage their pulling power in that sense as well.
Fantastic.
Councillor Tantros?
Thank you. Thank you for the report to both of you, and welcome to our council. Nice to meet you. And thank you for the conversation today. It's very interesting. I always get worried about organisations like ours, the potential to over-bureaucratise things and stifle things with good intentions. And some of the most wonderful flourishings of artistic activity I've seen have been where all people have had access to really is just cheap rent, and to be allowed to just do their thing without too much risk. You know, they can take risk and try things out, and there's not that much in it, and the economic stuff might come later, but obviously it's not really a driver, right? It's like a byproduct. So that's kind of preluding comment to, it might be premature to ask you, but I'm interested in your thoughts about the arts sector in our district. You know, because you'll have people who are kind of developing their craft and really just need someone to practice. And then you'll have kind of people who are in the height of their career, Sarah Hudson winning the Brownell and Tami and stuff like that, doing amazing things. So we've got quite a mix of different, as I suppose everybody. Just interested in do you have any reflections about kind of where our practitioners sit in that?
Across that spectrum.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, I guess we have impressions based on our conversations, and yeah, I think there is we do have a spread across that spectrum, and you also have people and communities perhaps slightly more visible that enjoy arts and the old term crafts for recreational and kind of cohesion perspectives. What we saw, which was also, I mean, this has been really inspiring piece of work for me to do. I have to say, I come away from all these conversations buzzing. Your more commercially successful oriented artists at this end are proactively engaging in opportunities to bring new. So, as a completely out of scope, but as a byline here, the educational opportunities around this are quite significant as well. So we've seen people taking interns, we've seen people creating modular course. Some ET is an example when they've been setting up production for movies and filming, and they're bringing in small cohorts of students from high schools or others, and sometimes vulnerable youth, to show them and give them some skills around that. So we saw another example around Waka Building, where people are being brought in a short-term residential kind of course to both give them skills, feed their creativity, add to their skill set, but also it's a giving back from the experienced artists, but it's also helping their mahi as well. Again, there feels like there's a tipping point in terms of the level of engagement you've got on multiple fronts: supportive community, supportive creative sector, supportive council, from what I've seen thus far. There's the opportunity to make some of the magic that you're talking about, Councillor. I think it will be important when we bring the report back that we give you pragmatic as well as visionary steps, because I agree with you, sometimes we can get focused on the perfect solution. And in an evolving sector like this, I think it's good to make sure that there are staged approaches.
I couldn't remember the acronym when you mentioned the link to STEM. I mean, art and money have always been linked, but have you heard of these things called NFTs? Non-fungible tokens?
And I'm a complete
it's bizarre, but it exists, and I don't know if there's any activity going on in that area, especially linking Maori art. I mean, Maori art as an NFT could be something quite valuable, I suppose.
I think the opportunity, as you suggest, Meluka, is that when you bring communities together in a way that we've managed to do here, you get the cross-pollination of ideas that stimulate these further opportunities. And that's what we heard very much through the research that's happened before, and what people are saying to us now is they want, first and foremost, the ability to come together. Places and spaces to do that. So that's one of the things we are focusing on.
I guess I'm just wondering if there's a better way of monetising it.
There is someone locally doing it.
ETFs.
NFTs, yes.
Sorry, NFT. ETF, something else.
Can I just ask, is this strategy encompassing all forms of art or just Maori art? All forms. Thank you. No further question? Councillor Boynton. Sorry.
Kia ora, mihi atu kia o kuro, kia o koutou, mo tō mahi, and your report. Thank you for presenting this, and just acknowledge the mahi that went into the survey that was out for the public as well, and some of the information in there. What I wanted to ask was probably along similar lines as Nandor, and that was around ensuring that the mahi that is being done organically by current artists in terms of wanting to pursue the creation of a hub. I want to ask that whether or not this further research or this further investigation and report will not hold up that actual process.
No, I think it should support it. So when I do hub like this, it's because I don't want to preempt an outcome, but I'm not convinced about the value of a one-place approach to things for multiple reasons. One is it's hard to satisfy all our forms. It's hard to be one place everywhere. Secondly, is you have existing infrastructure, both in terms of Takitaki and Te Kaupatu, but also some of the studios and artists' places that are set up already. I think that what we hope to do through this work is to give some visibility to what is already happening in terms of the existing stock take and how that can be supported through a hub concept, not to hold that in anticipation of some kind of final perfect outcome, which the sector's organic, it's evolving. A creative hub approach needs to be similarly agile to make sure that we don't disadvantage before we advantage. Is that
I'm not too sure because, organically there is already, movement out there, and I understand too that while the report and while the investigation may include the mana of those who have the international status and also the clear ability to be able to bring in foreign investment, that we are mindful and careful that if we are leveraging off that in our reports to be able to promote a certain way, that we are not at the same time preventing those particular people from organically being able to develop their hubs. Well, that's my concern, is that like a bureaucratic, process who wants to determine their own position then becomes a barrier to the actual talent of what we are promoting from them being able to do and be what it is that they can do. And that's where my question is I want to ensure that we are not inhibiting the very thing that we are promoting and that we are not leveraging off the success of those particular people who are driving this area to then make a ruling as to whether or not they can do what they do or not.
I understand, and sorry, and I didn't understand your point, so thank you. The short answer is I agree with everything you've said, and there is nothing we are doing. I will assure you that there is nothing that we are doing that is intended to or should inadvertently inhibit. In fact, it is about partnering in a way that there's a sense of autonomy within the sector for those that are leading and driving. We understand where the role of council starts and ends in terms of those relationships and those partnerships. But a sustainable outcome needs to be sector-led and council supported, not the other way.
Aye. Okay, no, thank you. I just wanted to make that clear because it can seem like one coming before the other or one's going to hold up the other. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. We'll move on to recommendations, which are on page 47. Living Together Committee received the Creative Hub feasibility investigation update report. Mover, Councillor Tansosh, Councillor Dennis. Discussion, all those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you for that, ladies. Very good. And we will stop for morning tea and be back in here 10:45. Yeah, 10:45.
Thank you, Alex.
Welcome back, everyone, and we'll reconvene the meeting now. A reminder that the meeting has been live streamed. We move on to Paul, who's going to be talking about the strategic Maori relationship on pages 59 to 73. Over to you, Paul.
Morena tātou. So this is our 6 monthly report. Recommendations are that they be received and be accepted, so I'll take them as read, but I would like to just briefly outline, there's many highlights in this in the last 6 months, but 3 notable ones that I'll bring to your attention, please, is the progress that we're getting through the Better Off Policy Hub and the work that's now that they're up and running. We've shared a little bit around that. The second one is the success of having a dedicated resource with the Reo and Ngāti Awa, and the outputs that are occurring to here, sitting in the back of the room here, so she's available if you have any questions. And then the Reo space is obviously linked to Ngāti Manawa, and the other point is seeing the fruits of the return of investment of the relationship lead through Donna Cowdrey, who's also in the room with us today, who cares and nurtures for Ngāti Whare and Ngāti Manawa and the success that we're having up in that space. And there's lots of rich kōrero in the report around where the relationship status is between with those two iwi in the south, and those trips that elected members went on to Hastings, the progress that we're getting through the master plan, southern master plans, and that's getting slow. We are speeding up at the moment. The day-to-day business as usual that our teams link in with Donna, so the success of that, and most poignant is probably the fact that, and it links back to Reorua, is the request from Ngāti Manawa to Reorua partner with Whakatane District Council, which is also in the report. So 3 notable achievements that I think are worth bringing to your attention, but I'll take it as read and welcome you,
and we welcome Michelle to the table.
Kia ora, Michelle. Sorry, I thought she was still sitting here.
Councillor Duke.
It's a bit of a weird comment though, but I'm just wondering why we have to have recommendation 2, which is that the report be accepted, because it's not usual that we say that. Like, I'm happy to receive a report, but I might not necessarily accept everything that's within that report. It's just not usual practice to have that it be accepted. So I'm just wondering, is there any specific reason why you're wanting us to accept it there, or?
Just following previous procedure, but I think this comment might have actually come up in the last one. So take your guidance.
I'm pretty sure I made it last
received.
We're really just to receive the report. We're not accepting, because there can be controversy coming into accepting every comment you've made. If Mr. Chair allows that to be removed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Morena Korua, and others. Just I'm on page 64, 4.3.1, the treaty settlement update with Whakatohia. So, Whakatohia will become one of our iwi, but only this end.
Can you explain what you mean by this end?
You know, at the Nokaho end,
so
on the Ohiwa Harbour end.
That's the, I'm disclosing to you where the touch point is. Yeah. So Whakatohia's settlement area boundary does come west into our district boundary. So we've mapped that, and you can see where their boundary overlaps on us, and it's around Nukuhau and around the back of Ohiwa to various areas. So we're expecting enactment in the next few days. So once that's done, we will be reaching out to Whakatohia to have an informal meeting, and then we'll bring a much more substantial report back to you and brief you on the Whakatohia settlement. Ideally, it would be great if Whakatohia agreed to come in and present, which will be even richer. Or we might go to them, but we will be providing you a settlement update in the near future when it's the royal assent goes through in the next few days or weeks.
Just a supplementary, yeah. So that means Whakatohia will be part of the Whakatane District Council and the Pōtiki District Council. Yes. And is that normal? I guess just wherever the boundary sits.
The boundaries overlap. It's quite normal.
Okay.
Yeah, Victor?
Yeah, Paul, the Marine and Coastal Area Act. I guess this is a piece of national legislation. So what role do we really have there? I mean,
once the permits are issued, around consenting, so we've got activities in the marine coastal area, and iwi will have permits that will state the activity that is enabled, and where those activities may clash or be in opposition, we will need to have discussions. And I think I'll refer you back to those MACA briefings that we had, where Michelle and Danielle Corbell came in and presented, and happy to defer to Michelle to carry on this conversation. But essentially, we've got a responsibility or an activity or an asset, and that comes up against an activity of a permit holder, then we'll need to have discussions, because if they're in opposition, we could have an issue.
Just clarification, it's a right, so it's a right, not a permit, and that is granted by the judge.
So the right to collect firewood, the right to harvest a certain type of food. If our activity, i.e. a pipe goes out to sea or a boat, whatever, impedes on that activity, we can have discussions.
Okay. Are we going to be having any more noho marae? Because it kind of started with a hiss and a roar, and then we're in a new triennium now.
Yes, absolutely. So we're in. We've got a presentation going to exec. So we've redrafted. We just had a meeting end of last week with staff that have been involved in the redraft and the reset of that program. It looks different. It's shorter but more regular. There's more topics, and the way that we're looking to deliver those topics is different than 4 days, 3 days at a noho. We're looking to shorten that, but have a more steady frequency, so there's not a lag between topics. So absolutely, we're just responding to different work pressures as our resources stretched, but absolutely we're looking to restart those end of this year or in the new year.
Councillor Riles.
Thank you, Chair. Just to follow on from Deputy Mayor's comment, we also asked if we could reintroduce what used to be a normal procedure at the beginning of each triennium to all be put on a coach basically and taken around our district to see what actual assets we own within our district. And we were told that there had to be consultation with iwi hapu again before we could undertake that process, which has been hasn't happened for the last 2 trienniums. So I was just wondering, has that progressed, that we may be able to do something before this triennium concludes?
Yes, we're having discussions internally inside the organisation. It's actually availability of elected members. There's not so much consultation with iwi. It was more around, if we're going to roll into those, we're going to visit those locations, what's the right thing to do? And some of them were open, some of them wanted to host you, go through formalities. Some of them were saying, no, but we would like to host you. So places like Whare and Manawai were on standby to receive elected members. Unfortunately, it was really hard to get availability of elected members through the LTP process. So we've actually got discussions and a draft underway with governance now to explore in August. But there are other conversations too. So we're just juggling your availability to get out and about, essentially. There has been an ongoing struggle. So we've been working with governance on that.
Supplementary, if I may. Thanks for that, Paul. But again, I honestly and truly believe that that is something that should be front and foremost at the beginning of each triennium. I think it gives the urban councillors, among others, the opportunity actually to get out into those far-reaching areas like Ruatahuna, Minganui, etc., to see exactly what infrastructure councils have there. And I think that gives you a broader perspective when it comes to the LTP and it comes to deprivation, you name it. There's a lot more to our district than just urban whakatane. So I would certainly encourage not only that it happen in August, but it be put first and foremost for the next triennium, so that something like that can kickstart that insight into people, into councillors' ability to understand our district as a whole.
We welcome a directive from elected members to to get that underway. We've got a proposal underway, but
I think we will say bring it on.
we're at your, we can organise this and we can make it happen at speed. Once again, you tell us when you want to do it.
Tomorrow.
Okay, on to this. Oh, after. Yes, it is. Inside of the, I think it was inside of our deliberation.
Yes.
Inside of the, there was some, I would call sacrifices that our community had to make in terms to get us to our rates down. And inside I did make an offer that for councillors to do this road trip over into Murupara. Do I now, but like Andrew said, it would be really great to go wide. So you need to hear the director say, when can this happen? Now, if Ngāti Manawa and Ngāti Whare are waiting, I'm trying to tell you, let's just do it. I just want to keep it kind of simple, you know. I'm trying to be really technical on giving you a directive, and whether we have to hear the word directive, let's just do this. And what does that mean, and what does that look like? I think it was told maybe after the LTB, once it goes through there. I did say a barbecue, I don't know what's our, and also, it's also in support with Murupara or our community boards as well. I think all our community boards would like to see councillors walk through the communities and support. So have I actually told you fellas just to do it?
We will share this back to the governance team and start working.
Thank you.
Ma'am.
Mine is a different topic, if there are other councillors wanting to contribute to that discussion. Which, that, no, just to road. Thank you. I've got point of clarification and a comment. Just I'm on page 68 on the Reo Roa. So the second item in the box there says WDC contestable funding for public. I've had a few comments from community members about this, and there's two things attached to it. One is, it seems like we keep talking about Reo Roa being a Whakatane District Council initiative, and I thought we were supporting Ngāti Awa to deliver it.
It's a partnership.
So all the effort is in partnership, it's not one-sided to District Council?
So it's got a rautaki that has WDC outputs, Ngāti Awa outputs, and where we mutually deliver. So there's 3 years worth of outputs that we agree on at an operational level, and Ngāti Awa's got funding to do their side, as well as funding from DIA to have manpower to respond to the design and outputs with mutual, and WDC's got responsibilities, and we do that through our activities.
Okay, it seems like the Reo Roa was way bigger than I thought. That it was just about bilingual street naming, so I can see it's a bit more. So the WDC contestable fund is being provided by DIA, like they have provided Ngāti Awa.
The funding from DIA is to ensure an equitable partnership. So we've got 300 staff in our organisation, or thereabouts, 200. Shrona's got no one dedicated to Reo Roa on that side. So DIA funds that project manager on their side. So it's equitable. They've got someone that can actually talk to WDC for Reo Roa topic only. It's got it's 2 years worth of funding. The outputs are then mutually discussed on both sides through the activities, and our funding's through our activities. So the $25,000 that is through WDC is for a contestable fund, like the other contestable funds that we do, and it's for public to apply.
So did we develop a separate Reo Roa fund as part of the annual plan when we approved this?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And you've got councillors that are sitting on that selection panel and have recently just completed round 1. I think they reported back on it a few weeks ago, and we've got round 2 open at present. Yep, that's right.
Right, thank you. And my other comment was, with us doing this together with Ngāti Awa and potentially Ngāti Manawa and others, there seems to be a bit of public perception that we are doing all the driving. So will those other partners like do media releases and talk all back to the support we're giving them? Because it just seems a bit one-sided.
So when Ngāti Awa was announced, that was a mutual comms release and it was public in the Beacon. And there is going to be another one that will be a public media release and that will likely between the Mayor and the Chair of Ngāti Manoa. So absolutely all comms releases that we do are mutually designed and drafted. But certainly it's in the work on the ground is absolutely mutual. I'll use the example of the Pou on Landing Road. Tangi Miriana and Tunihi and the infrastructure team are deep in discussions for the design of what will happen at Landing Road. So yeah, whilst it may not be optically available, it is absolutely there as far as the Reo Rua is. It's a partnership, and Reo Rua is the vehicle to a relationship. That's the vehicle. It's actually the whole Reo Rua program is about improving relationships.
Thank you.
Councillor Boynton.
Oh, kia ora. Ora kōrua, me hea ki a kōrua mo tō mahi. Aha. Ai a tātou, rohe a tātou, Māori, i tātou, i a tātou rohe. So I just wanted to acknowledge the mahi and the report that you've done, and also just highlight on, just acknowledge the support in regards to the Māori Wards kaupapa, and acknowledge too that the community themselves, through the communications of the council, have acknowledged that support. And I just wanted to acknowledge the comments that were shared publicly from different hapu pages and different marae pages in response to having a public message from the council encouraging, making clear their stance on Māori wards, but also to encouraging whānau to make submissions. So I just wanted to acknowledge the overwhelming positive feedback from the public around that, and I understand that your team has worked hard to support our council in ensuring that we had that come across. I did also wanted to support what the previous councillors have brought up about ensuring that we do have that hui a kānohi with our iwi organisations and our haerena around the rohe. Just to be able to see people by face, but also to be able to touch place as well. Just one point in regards to the Reo Rua, there is some confusion, and I must admit I have become confused too, is that it has been promoted quite widely throughout the rohe, but it's not quite clear that there's only specific iwi that it applies to. So for example, the kaupapa has been shared up the valley, and then obviously it's only in partnership with another iwi that is not up the valley. So I just wanting to give that feedback that there is some confusion around that, and hoping to not create some difference between different iwi, because their whānau want to apply for it, but it's not within their iwi space.
If I might, a little point of clarity. In the title it says Reo Rua Whakatāne Ngāti Awa Whakatāne District Council. It does say that in the opening. The second part is it is actually open to the public, and the purpose of that fund does not confine it to one iwi.
Oh, okay.
It's actually to promote, and I'm not on the panel, but there are some elected members on here, and Dennis is leading that process. It is open to actually public, but the criteria does acknowledge that there are some portions of the public, especially in the Māori, they can access funding for te reo that other public groups cannot. So they factored it in, and I'll defer to Councillor Dennis on this one here.
In the last round, we took half the available funding, and we had the first round deliberately to get in before Matariki, to enable people to do Matariki celebrations, which promoted Te Reo. But you'll find that Tūhoe Festival was the recipient, applied and are the recipients of some of that fund.
Oh, great.
For the promotion in the whole district, as well as Ngāti Awa Marae's, etc. And there were some applications from other iwi, may not have been as successful, but it was a broad stroke. And so with the Ngāti Awa representatives of Dottie Belshaw and Romana Graham, there was a consensus for the widespread distribution to enable promotion of Te Reo.
Oh, thank you for that. That's beautiful to hear, actually. So thank you. Kia ora.
Steph, did you want to comment on?
Just at the end, if councillors have got any, happy to go at the end if councillors have got, I see a few councillors have got their hand up.
Councillor O'Brien?
Just one question for you, Paula. Given that all the, I guess, funding has dried up for Hapu and iwi to apply for Mecca, do we, as council, still forge on with having to provide evidence? Because we're not even sure whether that's who's going to come up, but I guess we still have to forge on.
To your point, we still need to prepare, and we're still progressing that at an operational level. We were talking about it this morning, about in the next few weeks we need to start to work with our teams. We're still getting communications from our legal advisors about what work needs to be carried out in order, on the chance that if it does get turned on at speed, and we, like you say, we're unsure where this current government sits regarding Mecca, we don't want to be caught short. We've actually got a tranche of work that we didn't do last time that we've identified we need to do this time. And that's because last time it was to the east and had a smaller footprint. This has got a much bigger footprint and much thorough job. So yeah, we do want to forge on, and let's be ready, because then the work's done and it can sit and hold ready to go.
Councillor Tentros?
Thank you. I was just looking at the Appendix 1, the critical success factors years 1 and 2. There's a few of those which are indicated as off track. My question is, which of those would you think represent a significant risk for us as an organisation in terms of
Scanning those now. We've tried our best to prioritise the high risk ones. Some of those ones that are orange, they go through phases where they're current and then we can pause them or something else comes up as we react. We've got work to do to get our rhythm back with Ngāti Awa, and those will be ongoing conversations, and now that we're through the LTP, we're making that a priority because they are a significant the location of Ngāti Awa, so we want to get across when they're ready to receive us. In the next few weeks we'll go down and have a hui. That one there is probably the one that, and Michelle, you might want to add to this if there's any others that come front of mind. That is the one that's pressing for me because it's impacting on a lot of our teams as well as pressure building over there. So we want to get tight. But then there's also other successes happening in Ngāti Awa, so it's when we've got space we address and when we'll retreat because we've got to position ourselves. We're a small team and we're business partnering across the team, so our work is heavily driven by the requests of our colleagues and what support they need. And when we've got a little bit of airspace, we'll come up and we'll do some of our critical success factors, and hence the reason why the FTEs that you've supported us on in the LTP will have a significant impact on getting these through. And these are the long-term gains. These ones will change this organisation significantly. I mean, change for the positive, not making it harder. It'll actually enable staff to get to progress things quickly. Of those oranges?
No, I think it's just the overall fact that we're a small team and we're trying to help our colleagues as much as possible to be more proactive, so not being so reactive, but we're sort of doing it hand in hand. So a lot of the projects that fall out of here that would make us proactive are just being put on the back burner until after RTP. Resource to start doing some of those, and those will be the things that you'll actually see and be able to use.
When you talked about some of the long-term things, this is around separating the relationship from the personalities of it and creating an institutional connection.
These are the systems and tools that enable a staff member to come in and relatively quickly, if not immediately, hit the ground running, because the policies and the guidelines. I mean, I'll use an example at the moment. We're working with GIS team. We've got layers, but they're not easily, so we're trying to work with GIS to make it so that any staff member can, or yourselves, it's really easy to interrogate the system and pull the knowledge. Otherwise, they come to us and we've got to verify it, and then we've got to go and speak with Iwi and Hapu. We don't have the knowledge bank in the systems to easily extract information. And we're also learning through sometimes making mistakes, and the relationships are strong enough and mature enough to, in most cases, to absorb where we might have made an error. But through those conversations, we're identifying, gosh, we didn't think there was an issue. We've got to go back and add that to the list to do to be better. Those long changes will make this organisation what I would call cutting edge when it comes to relationship excellence with iwi and hapu, when you can get on top of them.
Any other questions, Steph?
Thank you, Chairman James. I just wanted to comment, because this has been my last, this is the CEO KPI for the end of this financial year, so the two reports due in December and May, and I just wanted to comment on it, given that this will be the last time it comes to council before I depart, and just from a strategic level want to reflect how far we've come. So in the 3.5 years, so we're sitting here and interrogating some really good programs of work like Reo Roa and the MACA program, but the difference in conversation because of the investment in this piece of work and the framework around Te Toi Waka Whakarei, for me is really heartening. And I want to acknowledge Paul and Michelle and the team. There's multiple members of the team in the chambers today, and our wider Māori ropu across the organisation, Te Ohu and Tangi Miriana's there, who's also been a strong supporter of the Reo Roa, in fact leading that out. So what Te Toi Kotuia present for you is a team of trusted people, not only internally, but also externally. So we get a lot of soft intel that comes through trusted channels now that's really, really informative. And even though I support and endorse the councillors' the requirement to get some good governance reporting from a qualitative and a quantitative perspective to say, how are we going against the strategy, which is all about giving life to our LTP priority. Actually, the team have got in this incredible place as a business support team, as a business partnering team, but they have expectations of them both internally and also externally, which our other business partnering teams aren't in that nexus. So it puts extraordinary pressure on them, but it also means that their skills and expertise in works is really precious from my perspective, and hugely valued across the organisation. And so I just want to say that we know we've got a long way to go, and Paul and I have long conversations about the things we've had to trade off. So the training program has sat still for a little while because the team's been fully occupied largely with LTP processes, but we saw the benefit of that engagement in our LTP process through the number of iwi and hapu and whānau groups who turned up and engaged in the LTP process, which we haven't seen before. So it's that trade-off, and I would encourage council to continue to lift your eyes to the sky and think about the vision for this in terms of your LTP priority, but also not become complacent or confident that everything is sorted and that it doesn't need the attention and the energy that it requires. It's going to need that for ongoing time. We are coming from behind probably a start line to start with. And Paul's pretty hard on himself, as is Michelle. They might say we might be at the start line now, but there's a long way to go, and we recognise that as well. So humbly saying, we know that there's a journey in front, but I'm very happy in terms of being able to report this to councillors in a formalised way, and for you to be able to track progress and see where the effort is going. And I think more often than not, the return is actually felt more in a qualitative relationship, intuitive sense. More quantitatively is the questions you ask rightly of us: are we in court less? Are we having less issues and being reactive less? All those sorts of things. And I think by and large we can hand on heart say that that's certainly the direction of travel. So you're just delighted, and I just want to acknowledge the staff for the work that they've done to present this to you and the work that continues, and thank Council for your support for the strategy. Next week we are going to the Taituara Awards, and we hope that we might be able to come back with some good news about the strategy and its place in the national sector. But even recently, I know that Paul and Michelle have been approached by other councils who want to understand what we've done with the strategy and understand how they might be able to start their own journey in their own place as well. So, ngā mihi nui, kia koutou. Thank you very much to the Tuikotoia team, and in fact the wider team as well that support them.
So we'll move on to the one recommendation on page 59. Would someone like to move that we accept, know that we received Paul's report? Councillor Isles, Deputy Mayor Iming. Any discussion? All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you for that. Thank you, Michelle and Paul. And people in the back.
Thank you.
We need a resolution now to move into public excluded. So do I have a mover? Councillor Isles, Councillor Tensos, all those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Do we need to
Those with the karakia.
wait for it to go back to life?
Back to live, if we can just retract those motions.
Yep. Okay, we're back live streaming now. So, do I have a mover and a seconder that the Eastern Bay of Plenty Local Alcohol Policy Report be received and that the Living Together Committee exclude the public from consideration of this report on the grounds set out in the Local Government Official Information and Meetings Act 1987 under section 48(2), and that the Living Together Committee confirm that the report be released to the public once the legal proceedings have been completed. Have a mover? We're back in public arena now. Councillor Tanzos, Councillor Boynton, all those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you very much for your attendance today. And I ask Councillor Rangioho to close the meeting of the karakia.
Kia whakairia te tapu, kia wātea ai te ara. Kia tūriki whakataha ai, kia tūriki whakataha ai. Haumi e hui e, tai ki e. Restrictions are moved aside so the pathway is clear to return to everyday activity. This is our unity.
Thank you everyone, and as everyone's aware, lunch is actually out of